H. Holmes was one of the most calculating and terrifying serial killers in American history, and his crimes took place inside a custom-built architectural nightmare designed entirely for slaughter. Operating in Chicago during the massive 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, Holmes constructed a sprawling, multi-story building that locals and newspapers would chillingly come to call the Murder Castle. While millions of innocent tourists flocked to the city to celebrate technological progress, Holmes operated an industrialized factory of death right underneath their noses. Born Herman Webster Mudgett, Holmes was a handsome man with piercing blue eyes and an undeniable charm. Using his sharp intellect and fraudulent business schemes, he acquired land in Inglewood and constructed a massive mixed-use building featuring a pharmacy on the ground floor and apartments upstairs. To the outside world, it looked like a normal commercial block. Behind closed doors, however, it was an absolute labyrinthian nightmare. Holmes hired and fired dozens of construction crews, so no single worker ever saw the full blueprint. The structure featured secret hallways, dead ends, hidden staircases, and soundproof rooms equipped with gas lines. Certain rooms were airtight and lined with iron plates, allowing Holmes to pump lethal gas into chambers below, while other rooms contained trapdoors that dropped victims straight down into dark, subterranean chutes leading to the basement. Holmes preyed mostly on young, vulnerable women, out-of-town tourists, and employees who came to Chicago looking for work during the chaotic rush of the World's Fair. He would target them by offering attractive positions or romantic partnerships, charming them before the trap shut. The basement of the Murder Castle was a literal industrial charnel house featuring acid vats, quicklime pits, and a massive custom-built crematorium capable of reducing a human body to fine ash. For other victims, Holmes systematically stripped, dissected, and defleshed the human skeletons, selling the complete bones directly to medical schools for extra cash. His empire of horror ultimately collapsed due to financial fraud rather than murder. Following a botched insurance fraud scheme involving his partner Benjamin Peitzel, Holmes went on to murder Peitzel and 3 of his innocent children. A relentless insurance investigator tracked Holmes across the country, leading to his arrest in Boston. When authorities finally stepped inside 601 West 63rd Street, they uncovered the gas chambers, trapdoors, hidden chutes, and a basement filled with human bones. Holmes was put on trial, found guilty, and walked up the steps to the gallows at Moyamensing Prison on May 7, 1896, leaving behind a legacy as one of history's most chilling predators. Ted Bundy was one of the most chillingly deceptive and destructive serial killers in American history, operating a multi-state rampage across the United States during the 1970s. Beneath an exterior of high intelligence, polished good looks, and undeniable charm, Bundy possessed a complete lack of human empathy, transforming everyday society into his personal hunting ground. Unlike predators who lurked in dark alleys, Bundy weaponized trust. He used his charming demeanor, fake arm casts, crutches, and stolen disguises to look vulnerable or authoritative, frequently asking young women for help carrying books or loading equipment into his Volkswagen Beetle. Once they lowered their guard and stepped close to assist him, the mask slipped away instantly, and he overpowered them and abducted them. His crimes spanned across Washington, Utah, Colorado, Florida, and multiple other states, leaving law enforcement baffled because his targets seemed to have no connection to one another. He broke into sorority houses in the dead of night, committing horrific assaults before vanishing into the darkness without leaving clear forensic clues. Bundy's downfall finally arrived after a series of reckless mistakes in Florida, leading to his high-profile arrest. Even during his subsequent trials, which became media spectacles broadcast across the nation, Bundy acted as his own defense attorney, flashing charismatic smiles at the jury and even proposing to his girlfriend in the courtroom. After twice escaping from custody through sheer audacity, including jumping out of a courthouse library window, he was recaptured for the final time. Before his execution in the electric chair in Florida in 1989, Bundy confessed to a staggering number of brutal murders, shattering the comforting illusion that monsters always look terrifying and proving that evil can wear the face of a friendly neighbor. Jeffrey Dahmer was one of the most disturbing and macabre serial killers in American history, operating primarily out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer stalked bars, clubs, and public spaces, using alcohol, money, and manipulative charm to lure young men and boys back to his apartment. Once inside his locked doors, his victims were subjected to unimaginable nightmares. Dahmer committed brutal murders accompanied by dismemberment, necrophilia, and horrifying preservation experiments, keeping bones, skulls, and body parts as macabre trophies scattered across his living quarters, despite suspicion on multiple occasions, including a harrowing near escape where a drugged and injured victim managed to stumble out onto the street, only for police to accidentally hand him back to Dahmer. The horror continued unchecked for years. The sheer scale of his depravity was finally uncovered when a terrified victim managed to break free with a handcuff dangling from his wrist, leading officers into an apartment reeking of decay and lined with Polaroids of his mutilated victims. Arrested and later beaten to death in prison, Dahmer's legacy remains a chilling reminder of how easily evil can hide behind closed doors in an ordinary neighborhood.
John Wayne Gacy was one of the most prolific and deceptive serial killers in American history, operating a horrific double life in a quiet suburb of Chicago, Illinois. On the surface, Gacy was viewed as a pillar of his community, a successful businessman, a cheerful local contractor, and an active political volunteer who even dressed up as Pogo the Clown to entertain children at neighborhood parties and hospitals. Beneath that joyful facade, however, he concealed a monstrous predator. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy lured dozens of young men and teenage boys to his home under the guise of offering them construction jobs or employment opportunities. Once inside, he trapped, tortured, and murdered his victims with chilling efficiency. Because of his respected standing in the community, when young men began to vanish without a trace, authorities and families initially dismissed the disappearances, completely blinded by his friendly reputation. The nightmare finally unraveled in late 1978, following the disappearance of a local teenager named Robert Peast, who had last been seen talking to Gacy about a job. As police launched an intensive investigation and placed Gacy under surveillance, they noticed a heavy, foul odor coming from his suburban home. When detectives searched the property, they uncovered a horrifying subterranean graveyard. Gacy had crammed 33 young victims into the crawl space beneath his house, while dumping several others into the nearby Des Plaines River. Arrested and put on trial, Gacy showed no genuine remorse, attempting to plead insanity while offering chilling details of his crimes. Found guilty on all counts, he was sentenced to death and spent over a decade on death row before his execution by lethal injection in 1994. John Wayne Gacy's legacy permanently shattered the illusion that evil always wears a frightening face, leaving behind a haunting reminder of the horrors that can hide behind a painted smile.
Richard Ramirez, known to the world as the Night Stalker, was one of the most terrifying and chaotic serial killers in American history, terrorizing the residents of California from 1984 to 1985. Unlike killers who targeted specific types of people or used elaborate ruses, Ramirez struck with random, unpredictable brutality, breaking into suburban homes in the dead of night to commit unthinkable acts of murder, sexual assault, and burglary. Sporting long, greasy black hair, sunglasses, and a row of decaying teeth, Ramirez cultivated a terrifying persona influenced by heavy metal music and dark occult imagery. He would slip through unlocked windows and sliding glass doors while families slept peacefully, attacking victims of all ages, from young children to elderly couples, using an assortment of weapons, ranging from handguns to knives and blunt objects. He left behind a calling card of dread, often forcing surviving victims or witnesses to swear allegiance to Satan. The entire state of California lived in a state of collective panic. Hardware stores sold out of window locks, deadbolts, and firearms as residents frantically fortified their homes. For months, police struggled to connect the chaotic crime scenes because there was no discernible pattern to his attacks. His victims varied wildly in age, race, and background. The nightmare finally broke in August 1985 when Ramirez fled a crime scene and abandoned his stolen car. As his face was plastered across morning newspapers and television broadcasts, Ramirez walked into a neighborhood in East Los Angeles, where sharp-eyed residents recognized him from the media alerts. Recognizing the killer, an angry mob chased him down, pinning him to the ground and subduing him until police arrived to make the arrest. Ramirez's trial became a sensational media circus, where he flashed upside-down pentagrams carved in his palm and taunted the court. Convicted of multiple counts of murder and horrific assaults, he was sentenced to death row, where he spent decades before dying of natural causes in 2013. The Night Stalker left behind a chilling legacy as a modern boogeyman who turned the quiet safety of the American suburban bedroom into a nightmare.